the Evolution Security Podcast. Hey there. Welcome to the Evolution Security Podcast. Eric and I are here again with a very special guest, a very unique guest with some unique experience and a unique take on firearms training and martial arts training. So we are excited to pick his brain. We have Mr. David Boon Benton from Threat Management Solutions. Hey, thanks for coming on, David.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, as we get in here, before we get into some good detailed info about your classes and your training, et cetera, why don't you go ahead and give us a quick background and bio of yourself so our audience knows who we're hanging out with here.
All right. From a professional perspective, I joined the military when I was 18, straight out of high school. I did that for about 7 years, 4 months. Then I went into law enforcement for a few years. After that, I went to the Central Intelligence Agency's Global Response Staff, and I stayed there till 2016.
Boon, I know sometimes maybe it may get, I don't think it will be tiresome because of your background, but one thing that our audience members a lot may know is that Boon was also a survivor of the Benghazi attacks in 2012. And again, a lot of us know how horrible that situation was, and that we've talked with DB and Sarah Adams on this show before about what really happened there, and what was not in the media or what was not understood was that it was an actual Al Qaeda attack and not a protest. So just kind of a reminder there. That is also where DB Boon comes from, is that he was also there and protected a lot of people, saved a lot of people's lives, if I can say so. But I just wanted to bring that up. So yes, with that said, so I'm curious, just a little bit of icebreaker questions. I'm curious, I know you're also, and then we didn't talk about this just yet on this show, was that you're also heavily into combatives. You're a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, correct?
That is correct.
I'm curious, being a black belt, I like to ask a lot of our mentors this, is do you happen to use video in your own preparation, like when you're trying to learn new stuff? Is that something that you get into?
Absolutely. That's one aspect of it. I think whether it's combatives, straight jiu-jitsu, MMA, firearms, I think we're all kind of always looking to see what everybody else is doing, just to get ideas and maybe look at something a different way. Like, hey, I haven't thought about that, to make sure that we evolve. But I also use a lot of my peers, a lot of other instructors, guys around me, senior black belts, because really once you get your black belt, you're a white belt again. It just starts all over again, and you're finding out things that you thought you knew, you don't know. So I rely heavily on senior black belts as well to kind of guide me and get motivation. But as far as video, absolutely.
Yeah, I am absolutely. I've spent a lot of money on BJJ Fanatics, I'll admit. I would say that I have narrowed down where almost all that I study these days has been a lot of the John Danaher stuff. Mm-hmm. Just because I think I learn well from his teaching methodologies. But yeah, I was thinking about that before pre-show. I'm like, I'm going to ask at the opening what Boon thinks of video. We live in a very interesting age. There is a lot of excellent information out there if you know where to find it. And I think you'll agree there's probably not so good information that's running around there too. But, I think it's pretty cool that we have the capabilities like BJJ Fanatics.
Absolutely. I think what you touched on, the hard part is knowing what's good information and what's not good information. And that can be very difficult at any level.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And again, also, like I also mentioned, is learning, like especially when it relates to video, is who you can relate to and learn from the easiest in that kind of medium. So, yeah. With that,
I like to call it jujitsu dry fire.
yeah,
I like that.
and I will mention, because we can go on and on about this type of subject, but I'm just a purple belt, so I agree. I mean, I'm working towards. I pray one day I get my black belt. I believe I will. Just stay consistent at it. But also being a coach at my gym, one of the best ways for me to incorporate new stuff. I kid you not. I will study video and I will work techniques on my grappling dummy, and I'll let the guys know. I'll say, hey, listen, this is a brand new set of techniques this morning. Bear with me. I'm going to try something new, and I get the repetition in, and then all of a sudden I've got a new a new set of techniques added. So I mean, it's certainly valid.
Absolutely.
Okay, Boon, with that said, we wanted to give you a break from all the other discussions that we love having with you. We really wanted to talk about your personal training that you offer, and that's under Threat Management Solutions. And I think I was telling you pre-show, I mean, you tend to be offering, of course, some of the standard pistol courses, carbine, but in the periphery, you add a lot of other stuff like combatives, mindset. You talk a lot more about some periphery items that I think some instructors don't necessarily cover. Would you agree with that?
Sure. We try to. It's always a struggle as an instructor to um, put what needs to be put into a class. And if you break it down, there's things that the student needs to know, there's things that they should know, and there's things that are nice for them to know. So it's always a balance of like, what do I need to put in? Because I only have so much time. 4 hours, 8 hours. A 2 day course, a 40-hour course. So it's always that struggle. So we really try to touch on the need to know, and then if we have time, the should know, and then nice to know. So we will add certain things in most classes, such as mindset. And I know a lot of people make fun of mindset, but it is a thing. The legalities of justified use of deadly force. And obviously, depending on the class, yes, we cover combatives as well.
Yeah, I'm looking at what one of the classes that piqued my interest is your 1-day low signature pistol with IPM, which the IPM stands for individual protective measures. I mean, some of the subjects you already hit on, your mental readiness and awareness, which we know, again, awareness is huge, if not sometimes the most important aspect, right? You talk about some terminal ballistics in that course, concealed carry concepts and considerations, because there's a lot of people. I'll just stop on that one.
Yeah.
That again, we spoke about there's a lot of information out there, and I think so. I would imagine, even though I know you just a little bit, I imagine that you're trying to help people not make mistakes in some of the gear they're buying too, right? Am I reading that correct?
We try to. It's just like any new sport, whether it's golf, you're going to go through a bunch of different brands and golf clubs. We all have like a box of holsters,
Yeah, I
or
do for
or whatever the discipline is. So we try to minimize that as much as we can, but we know it's a process you have to go through. But we want to start the student off right and minimize a lot of that learning curve, and hopefully they can learn from mistakes that we've already made.
Nice. I saw that and I figured, yeah, it's just one of those areas where, again, you can see all the types of commercials on YouTube. And I'm not trying to beat up on people. I don't mean it that way, because, we've all made those mistakes. But there are certainly some offerings out there that that folks probably should avoid. Aaron, what you got, buddy?
I would like to expound a little bit, if you could, Boon, on the aspect called individual protective measures. What would that mean?
So we see a lot of training, and I'm not knocking any of the training. It all has a place. But we see a lot of training that, I'm not saying it's bad, but it doesn't really apply to everyday life. Like run around with night vision goggles. Most people don't have a need for that. Not that they shouldn't be able to do it. So when we say individual protection measures, we're trying to give them TTPs that they can actually use to keep themselves safe if they're going to a little league game, if they're going to the mall, just in daily life, like things you're really going to need. Like when we talk about mindset, we're really talking about having the discipline and having the lifestyle change to train consistently, plan a real training budget, so you have the means to train consistently. Really study human beings, like pre-attack indicators, things like that. Awareness, situational, spatial, environmental awareness, actually understanding what's in your environment and then making that part of your lifestyle. So when we say individual protection measures, we're just talking about like basic safety TTPs that everyone should use daily anyway. Most people live in big cities, whether they realize it or not, they already do these things, where there's a inherent risk of crime, but in the suburbs, most people don't even think about it. They just go about their day. So that's what we mean when we talk about IPM.
Excellent.
Well, and Boon, it reminds me a lot of the time, and we talk about this on our show all the time, about how important mental cues are. And I mean, I think all of us, we have various times of how ramped up our awareness is. And we also know we can't go around in code orange all the time, so we have to understand where our awareness levels are, but also we can't be in transitional spaces with our heads in our rear ends, and so I think, to your point, is that a lot of folks in the suburbs don't think about even moving from their from their garage to their vehicle, and how important it is, to take a little bit of pause and look around you. I mean, I'll watch neighbors, just not, again, because I'm trying to beat up on people, but I'll see them just completely being unaware. And we live in a quiet, fairly safe area outside of Fort Bragg. But, it's like Tom Givens says, where the nice neighborhoods are is where some of the nice stuff is. So you need to be prepared in case some folks that want to come in and take it are in your AO. So,
well, it's just interesting that I taught a class focusing on concealed carry draw, the main thing that we really need to know as a skill set, right? And one of the students, I brought up the concept of being armed between your garage door and your vehicle. And right when I said that, one of the students piped up and said, my best friend's wife just yesterday morning started walking to her car, and a guy made a beeline straight to her. Luckily, she got in her car and was able to drive off. Now, talk about a great weapon, that gas pedal. But I mean, in a suburb here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, some lady getting into her car in a suburb, and the guy started trying to bang and open up her. By the time she got in, he was trying to get in the car with her too. So,
yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, and one of the other items that's mentioned on your one-day low signature pistol is also massive hemorrhage considerations. Which, I mean, again, so you offer a module on TACMed awesome. Then too.
We do. The way we break down training is in 3 phases. And we kind of like to look at it as basic fundamentals or validation, and then practical application, and then stress management, force on force. And those can be totally separate classes, kind of like a progression, and you repeat them as often as you can, as often as time and budget will allow you to. But then we try to incorporate a little bit of all of that into every class, which is hard to do. So depending on the nature of the curriculum of the class, like the low signature pistol, we like to include some type of medical training, especially geared towards trauma, massive hemorrhage, penetrating wounds. But it wouldn't be like our full medical class, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And boy, you just piqued my interest too. So even in that 1-day pistol course, you might have some force on force as well.
Depending on the nature of the class. If it's a fundamentals validation class, then probably not. But if it's a practical application or a stress management class, then yes, definitely.
Well, and I will say we only have so much time we want to steal from Boon tonight, but I will absolutely have the courses that you offer a plethora of courses. I mean, I see you also offer a red dot optics class. You offer, and I was going to kind of hit on this one too, because it reminded me of where I met you was the inaugural Combative Summit. And the course that you taught was a clearing of structures, right? So I was imagining that your close range engagement course had some or has some of that curriculum, if not expanded, correct?
It can. So a lot of the classes are a play on words. Unfortunately, we have to do that in the community to get people interested.
Mm-hmm.
For example, our low signature pistol course, it's a concealed carry course. But if I tell you, hey, it's a concealed defensive pistol course, you're not going to want to come. But if I'm like, hey, it's a low profile or low signature, low vis course, you're like, oh, that's Jason Bourne. I'm definitely coming to that class. So
good marketing.
Yes,
yeah, I was going to say that too. Yeah.
Unfortunately, but like close range engagement, it is basically a integrated combatives CQB class. But then we can break it down to where we focus on law enforcement and it's more of a team environment, or we focus on the law-abiding citizen and then it's more realistic for what they do, and it's more of like a 3 PRE third-party rescue and evacuation, kind of like we touched on at the Combative Summit.
Yeah, that was cool. You're, it wasn't full force on force, but the last exercise that you had us do was, we had to clear the structure and help evacuate, for lack of a better term, a VIP or a loved one out of the structure. Yeah, it was really good. And I think I said last time that clearing structures is certainly not an expertise that I have. And that was, we only had so much time, but your curriculum, no doubt geared towards the time that you had, but it was reductionist, but very concise. And so ever since then, of course I go around my house and work a lot, work the techniques that you espouse and taught us in that course. And I mean, they just work. I mean, I know there's more ways to skin a cat, and like Matt Pronka said on our show too, is like, everybody seems to have their own flavor, a way that they would clear a structure. But man, I just believe that what I learned from you during the Combative Summit is just something that everybody can apply.
Yeah, and to touch on that, like the CQB is a very specific thing. Like when I hear the term CQB, I think of a team sport. It's a team event. So that's why we use terms like 3 PRE or close range engagement versus CQB when we're dealing with like the law-abiding citizen, because context does matter.
Mm-hmm.
CQB, clearing a room is clearing a room, but the why of why I'm clearing that room matters. And that may change things slightly. There's still principles and fundamentals to CQB, but without that team environment, some of it may or may not work depending on your individual hard skills. So that's why we teach it a certain way when it comes to a law-abiding citizen doing solo CQB, CRE or 3 PRE.
Yeah, and I assumed that reading a lot of your descriptions, we're certainly marketing. It sounds to me like it's brilliant marketing, to be honest with you. But it also sounds like that you have such a breadth of knowledge, and also a knowledge on how to scale your courses very well to the needs of your clients. It is certainly what it sounds like.
And that's what we try to do. There's times where we won't refuse, but we'll talk clients out of wanting to host a certain type of course. Like we'll get a lot of requests for, I don't want to say fantasy courses, but we'll get a lot of requests from law-abiding citizens who want to do a sniper course. And we have to tell them, like, you don't need that. Like, if you want to learn long-range precision rifle, we can do that, but you don't need a sniper course. It might be fun, but you're going to waste your money. Same thing with some of the CQB courses, the night vision courses. So we really do try to tailor it to what they need, not really what they want. But in the tactical community, at the end of the day, like you don't make a lot of money giving them what they need. They want some of that excitement as well. But we try best we can to stay away from that.
Nice. Sounds really good, and we see it. We're not at your level, but certainly it's one of the things that we're realizing, how in hanging out a shingle. It's not that Aaron and I have a fantasy of being, whatever the next whiz bang instructor is. That's not at all why we got involved. To be frank with you, when we started this podcast, it started because folks were asking us, "Hey, do you guys provide training?" And Aaron and I just decided, and Brian Schilt as well. Well, if we're espousing a lot of this, maybe we should, most importantly, be available at a local or regional level where there are individuals that don't have, they can't necessarily get training from some of our mentors. Of course, our mentors travel, but we also like to be gateway instructors to be able to push individuals to guys like you, guys like Craig Douglas, you name it. Any of our folks that we train with. Tom Givens, of course, is one of our main instructors as well. But also, Aaron, I know he deals with it. I deal with it too. Is that sometimes people, they don't really want to learn what they really need to learn, and they do want the whiz bang out there sometimes. So not beating them up.
Just to clarify, I don't want guys thinking, oh, that Boon, he's a dick. So
no.
I don't have a problem with people training in things that they may or may not use. Like CQB courses are fun. Night vision courses are fun. We do a lot of that on the law enforcement side. But like if a group or an individual wants to learn that, I've got no problem with them going to a school and learning that. We just try to focus on the citizen who is serious about personal defense and actually protecting themselves. But I'm not against Americans learning whatever they want. You want to go jump out of a plane, cool. Scuba dive, cool. CrossFit Games, you want to go to CQB course, have at it. I'm not against it at all. We just don't really focus on that. And we try to discourage people who might not have the frame of reference to know what they need and what they don't need when their main goal is, hey, I just want to protect myself and my kids. That's all. But I'm not against the training at all.
Sure. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think you had that tone whatsoever.
No, I don't either.
It is important for individuals that are new to self-defense to understand that they need awareness in managing unknown contacts or some form of that probably before they need anything else. And then second to that, we know they need some combative skills probably before they need a weapon skill. So again, not everybody wants to get involved in combatives either. So, I know we might be beating a dead horse on that. But yeah, I love your attitude towards that. And I know our audience does as well. So that kind of segues into something that piqued my interest, and it may change the way that I that I really framed this question. One of the ones that interested me was, and what I felt was a little different, is your concealed defensive carbine course.
Ah, cool.
Would you say that is more geared? Because I think I saw it was an intermediate class, right? I don't have it listed right here whether or not it was or not. But is that more of a class that is more for law enforcement or folks that really would be in that type of environment where they might be concealing, or at least some form of concealment of a short-barreled rifle?
So it's both, actually. So we really don't do like basic, intermediate, and advanced. Sorry, like we mentioned before, we do more basic fundamentals, weapons manipulations, marksmanship validation, then practical application, then force on force threat management. And that's how we kind of break the classes down. So the Concealed Defensive Carbine course is a module that comes from one of our law enforcement classes, which is low visibility counterterrorism for law enforcement SWAT teams. And we would do this like every year at the Ohio Tactical Officers Association and for other agencies that would host us. So we noticed that a lot of concerned citizens were carrying like the truck gun and training with the truck gun, or putting carbines and folding pistols or SBRs in backpacks, and they didn't know how to deploy them. So we developed the Concealed Defensive Carbine course for the dedicated law-abiding citizen that would actually have that weapon system on them where they could actually use it. And we prescribe what we call lines of gear. First, second, and third lines of gear. First line of gear being what's on your body, bare minimum you need to get the job done. Second line gear would be like in a 3-day backpack that would enhance your ability to do whatever your task was. And that's where that Concealed Defensive Carbine fits in, would be in that second line gear. So that's where it kind of came from. It was a module from a law enforcement class that kind of fit into the immediate responder, prepared American category, if you will.
Very, very cool. Yeah, that certainly interests me. Even being a prior veteran myself, I'm a civilian now, and I was not in combat arms. I make that clear, every time. But of course, I carried a rifle downrange. But the point is that I am, more interested in specifically what I need as a civilian. Now, one of the things that piqued my interest was your discussion of, or the statement of ballistics from short barrels. And I am interested, what do you personally prefer out of short barreled rifles as far as cartridges and or specific loadouts?
So we did a lot of research into the short barrels, rifle caliber short barrels, and there's a limit of return, if you will. And when it comes to 5.56, with the right ammo, going below 7.5 inches is just a moot point. You don't gain anything from it. So personally, right now, if I'm carrying a 5.56 backpack gun, it's going to be a 7.5 inch barrel with a certain type of bonded ammo. And there's several manufacturers that gave us good results when we did the ballistic gel testing. The 300 Blackout is actually designed to be optimized from a short barrel. So obviously that's another good cartridge to use. The problem with the 300 Blackout right now is the industry has not caught up with the niche role it can fill when it comes to ammo. Like the Barnes 110 300 Blackout round, excellent round in a military context, but it has a little more overpenetration than what law enforcement or law-abiding citizen would be comfortable with. But ballistically, it's a terrific round. So obviously, 300 Blackout's a great choice. We're just not there when it comes to an optimized round for personal defense, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And interestingly enough, that is exactly the round that I have in my 300 pistol in an 8.3, I guess it is. So yeah, that when you said that, that piqued my interest, and I had heard some of what you had said, but you made a much more concise descriptor of that. So they just need, manufacturers are still working on it. I would hope so. But until then, so would you still recommend that round to your average civilian, or do you have another one in mind that you would recommend?
With in 300 blackout, I actually use that round, although it does overpenetrate slightly in gel. Obviously, ballistics on people is very unpredictable. The Hornady makes a round that we haven't done a lot of testing with yet. We need to do a lot more, but it shows promise for ideal penetration. As far as 300 blackout goes, I mean, that's about it right now. The rest are like 5.56, the bonded rounds, 64 grain, the 62 grain. The Spear 64 is actually being phased out for the Spear 62 grain. They have identical performance. The Winchester 64 grain bonded rounds, another good one. The Barnes 55 grain is another good one too. And this is all out of a 7.5 inch barrel. Now, understanding that there's a lot of cons that come with that 7.5 inch barrel, so you have to put it in context and understand what the weapon system is for. Can you still punch through body armor with it? Yes, you can. Can you still reach out to about 150 yards? Yes, you can. Ballistically, it's like a 100-yard gun. Terminal ballistics wise, it's a 100-yard gun. Can you hit targets farther? Sure. Will the ballistics be optimized for that? No, it's not what it's designed for. So as long as people understand what the intended purpose is of that short barrel, it's concealability and maneuverability. That's it.
So speaking of 5.56, and I don't mind being vulnerable. What I chose in my 10.5, and I just happen to have a box of it sitting here, is the Barnes TSX boat tail, which is it's their all copper 70 grain.
Yes.
And I wonder what you thought of that out of, say, the 10.5 or 10.3.
So out of the 10.3 in the past professionally, we use the 70 grain, the brown tip, and it performs very well for its intended purpose. It's just slightly expensive and hard to get.
Yeah, and to my knowledge, that's why I chose this specific round, because to my knowledge, it is a civilian version of the brown tip. Am I correct on that assumption?
Yes,
or at least close.
I know that's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice. Yeah. So that's something that I went and so my loadout for my 10.3 is that I guess civilian version of the brown tip. Well, cool. And I especially it's good to hear from guys that have used this professionally, because that gives us a lot of, at least some data points to go by for certain. Aaron, you got any questions based around that?
Well, you actually asked the question. I was curious about the particular rounds that I guess did you give any? Maybe there's a few more specific loads. So you mentioned the 62 grain bonded, which I think Gold Dot and the Federal loads are the same projectile. Am I on the same page with that, or?
No, so the Spear 64 grain Gold Dot was a very effective round, but Spear discontinued that for the 62 grain, but they're supposed to have ideal ballistics, or not ideal, the same ballistics. So the 62 grain replaced the 64. So you may be able to find old 64 grain on the market, but they no longer produce it. So if you get brand new ammo, or if you order it from Spear, it'll be the 62 grain, not the 64. The Winchester 64 grain, the Winchester Ranger, was another one that performed very well. And then the FBI 5.56 load, which I think the civilian version is the 62 grain Fusion. It's the same bullet. So those loads perform very well. And then the Barnes 55 grain or 50 grain performed very well also.
Yeah, I've got the Fusions in a couple of my rifles. I like those too. Pretty darn accurate too.
So, well, this has been a neat discussion about the training you offer, and we say this to most of our guests. It's time for us to get into some of your courses, and I don't know how far away you are from the Fort Bragg area, but I just went through a season where the range that I was offering classes wasn't. There was a board member didn't like people doing for profit classes, but now that's been reversed. So I'm back to doing classes back out there, and I can also host courses there as well. So maybe I don't know if, and I'm sure you probably spent some time out in the Fort Bragg area, but maybe I could, it'd be a good reason to have Aaron here for one of those if you would be interested.
Heck yeah.
I would be honored. I've been through Vietnam once or twice. I would be honored. Also, for Oklahoma, I actually go to Kiefer, Oklahoma, which is right outside of Tulsa, quite a bit, and use the Iron Gall range out there.
Oh, I know exactly where you are, and that's very close to me. So yeah, that'd be awesome.
So
yeah,
sorry, Aaron. We have an excuse to come to either location then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's keep in touch and make sure we know when you're coming in this area, or if we can host you, and I'll give Eric the honors of that. So awesome.
So segueing, one of the interesting subjects that I thought about, again, not being combat arms, certainly didn't do any type of GRS or the like gigs. But it was interesting to me. I know that you guys, let's say, as an example, one of your last gigs, say in Benghazi, obviously you guys worked hard, and you've done a good job in describing, how busy you guys were. But was there ever times where you felt like, hey, we all need to keep our combatives or our weapons handling skills up? Is that something that, did you guys ever have time to, at least dry fire and or, get on the mats together and whatnot? I was curious about that.
Excuse me. Absolutely. So it really depends on op tempo, how busy you are. But all the guys are into something. Like obviously physically as a stress reliever, guys are in the gym all the time. Yeah. But then there's certain guys who are into jiu-jitsu or MMA or kickboxing. And, we would gravitate and have a little combatives group where the whole team didn't do it, but the guys who are interested in that, yes, they did that, to the point to where we would have our gyms with mats in them. Nice. We would order equipment that the government would pay for, to where we had Tide pads, we had boxing gloves, we had protective equipment. So we had all that equipment to do that. And as far as dry fire goes, everybody dry fires. Now there's certain places where we have a range and we have access to a range, then we'll shoot and train as much as we can. If we're at a location where there's a shoot house, then we're going to utilize that as much as we can on our own time. Now, professionally, there's a deployment cycle that we have to go through. So there's certain training that we have to go through anyway. So when the guys are deploying, they're already spun up. They've already been through some type of pre-deployment training anyway. But yeah, it's constant. When guys are downrange, if they're interested in like USPSA or just being better shooters, then they're always dry firing or live firing any chance they get. And the same goes with the combatives.
Yeah, I assume so. I just thought it'd be a fun question to ask for audience members that certainly have no connection to that. And I personally assume, I'm like, I guarantee those guys are consistently training when the opportunity arises, because, obviously you guys are in the thick of it. At any moment, clearly you guys got into gunfights during that deployment. But the fact that you guys kept your skills up does not surprise me whatsoever. Yeah, I thought that would be a fun question.
Well, not only maintaining the skills, but it's also a stress reliever. And I'm not going to lie, we play a lot of video games too. So
Sure.
There you go.
Why not? It is funny you mentioned that. I really don't play video games that much anymore. I went through a period because when my son, I think I mentioned he's a Marine now. He's been a Marine for I'm going on 5 years now. And he and his family with our grandson and his wife, they're in Okinawa currently. But when he was around, I played a lot more because he was here, or I say here, at the house there in Washington when he was still in the house. But one thing I certainly do every time I deploy, I end up playing video games a little more because it is a stress relief and it's fun, and especially if you got guys that like to do it together, then it's a camaraderie thing. I mean, I'm heading overseas again. Nothing special. This will be my first time. I'm not going into Afghanistan or Iraq. I'm heading to good old Kuwait for a little while here next year. So I still, no matter where it is, I still kind of I focus on improvement. There's a lot more time, not as busy with 2 jobs. And so I just use it as an opportunity to gain some improvement. Always jiu-jitsu, even there in Kuwait, there's always something going on jiu-jitsu wise.
So Boon, you're the one that brought up video games. So what were some of the video games that you guys played overseas?
So the big one then, and again, I mean, this spans, multiple years.
Yeah, just lay it all out there. If it's Mario Brothers, just drop it.
It's not Mario Brothers, but I am a fan of Mario Kart. But it actually started in Afghanistan, and I swore that, hey, I would never play video games. To walk into the team room, everybody's playing video games on their downtime, and I'm like, that's unprofessional. I'm here to work. I'm not doing that. 2 weeks later, I was playing video games with them. So back then it was Halo, obviously.
Oh yeah.
And then after Halo, it became the Call of Duty series. The majority of the time, it was the Call of Duty series. Then it was Battlefield. Then it would go back to the new Call of Duty. And then currently it's Battlefield, and then Call of Duty again. So between those 2 games, it's probably we play the most.
Imagine that. Those are some surprising titles there.
I've been thinking about, honestly, what is it? Call of Duty has a new one out, Call of Duty 6, maybe. Am I correct on that? I don't mind being incorrect on the air, but I think my son mentioned that, and I believe he said he's been playing that. But yeah, that now you got me thinking about turning on my Xbox at some point. Well, cool. Go ahead, Aaron.
I think I would like to ask this question now. Boon, you are a GRS, or a Global Response Staff, in which you supported the CIA, correct? Now, what are some misconceptions that you might want to clear up, or what are some things that people assume about jobs like that, working with the CIA, all that stuff? What are some misconceptions that you might want to dispel? That I think that would be interesting.
We are not Jason Bourne assassins. The nature of GRS is a covert classified support element, but we are enablers. We are a support element that enables other people within the agency to do their job. I know that's vague, but
it's probably because you have to be vague. I completely understand all of that.
But we're not, direct action Jason Bourne assassins. Not what we do.
I will ask you this: do you like the Jason Bourne movies?
I thought they were very entertaining.
Yeah.
I did like the series. I like the way they ended it, and I think that they should stay ended. But yeah, I enjoyed the series.
Yeah, I think ultimately that's what it's about is it entertaining? And I think a lot of us at some point, and I'll just say this, the John Wick series, super cool. But I will say at some point I get a little bit overwhelmed if there's too much, it's, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but boy, at some point I'm like, man, can we get to some dialogue here?
We're like
But
Fast and Furious. We're on what, Fast 10 now?
yeah.
I mean, we could have stopped at 3.
Since we're on that subject, what did you think of the Terminal List series that came out based on Jack Carr's book? Did you see that series on Amazon?
I did, and unfortunately, I didn't read the book before watching the movie. I really enjoyed the movie, but I would suspect that the book is much better. So I need to read those books, but I really did enjoy the series.
Yeah, and I will admit I'm a voracious reader in those types of thrillers. It's just one of my pastimes. I like to read nonfiction as well, but I do read a lot of novels, and I will say that Jack Carr's novels are excellent. Plus, he seems to be from the outside looking in, seems to be super humble, seems to be a good dude. And yeah, I will tell you, the book is outstanding. I mean, it's like the best poetic justice revenge, and of course it has the cool ending. But I will say that series was pretty close to the book. It just didn't, obviously you can't have the same amount of details, and it did have some changes. But yeah, I recommend that book very highly.
Well, I just wanted to interject on that a couple of things. I loved the fact that series was basically a BCM commercial. And joking aside, of course, I love my BCM rifles, but what I dug, and when you see actors that are actually manipulating weapons like they've been trained, and that's the way Chris Pratt was in that movie, I just dug the heck out of that. He it's amazing how often you see actors using weapons, and you can, any of us that have any decent training is like, oh my gosh, did they not have someone to at least tell them not to wrap their finger around the trigger guard, things like that. but I loved how well Chris Pratt ran his weapons in that movie. It was at least convincing. He obviously had a little bit of training to do a good job on that.
Absolutely.
And to my knowledge, and I don't have the gentleman's name, is it? I think his last name's Shaw. I feel embarrassed because I just heard it again the other day. But of course, Jack Carr also helped with some of the weapons handling. But one of his partners that introduced him to Chris Pratt is a technical advisor. And incidentally, in Origin, of course, we're all into jiu-jitsu here on the screens here. And of course, Origin is I'm wearing an Origin hoodie, by the way. The Path, I love this sweatshirt. But Origin put out a video of Jocko Willink sitting with Chris Pratt, going over a lot of his movies, and that was one of the ones that they talked about. And Jocko was like, "Yeah, man." He would stop and was like, "Hey, man, this looks like you're doing some legit weapons handling." And so, yeah, that was kind of cool.
Yeah, there's just no way that when you see actors doing that, guys, we know how many reps we have to put in to get some skills. So that dude had to have put in some reps. I mean, I know there's still movie magic, etc., but I mean, I just love seeing it when you can clearly see some actors got some reps in on their weapons.
Speaking of books, I have a nice copy here of your and Sarah's book, Benghazi Know Thy Enemy. And I just wanted to ask this, moving to a little bit of a more serious subject for just a second, is I know you guys have consistently been having justice come out of that book. And I'm just curious, is there any new movement that that you wanted to talk about since the last time we had both you and Sarah on? Just curious.
Well, we did put out a Hakaya, Know That Enemy, and we did an October 7th as well, Know Thy Enemy, which really gets into the details of who planned these operations and where they came from. If you go to our website, Ascara Media, or our Instagram page, it's on there. You can download it for free and read it. So we've been working on that. And there also is a 2025 Homeland plot that we've been trying to spread the word about as well.
I thought I saw something about that on your guys' Instagram. And I mean, that is a perfect segue. And that was going to be one of the next questions I wanted to ask you about current threats that you're tracking. Do you want to kind of hit on that?
So we are tracking that. There are elements of Al Qaeda that are actually here in the United States currently, and they plan to attack sometime during 2025. It can be sooner, it could be later. We don't know. That's just the information we have at this time. A lot of people want to know specific targets. We don't have a specific target, but it seems as if it will be more like a Mumbai or October 7th attack, where you might have multiple attacks in multiple cities simultaneously.
Wow. Yeah, I to me, when I first saw mention of that on your guys' Instagram or wherever I saw it, I thought that's where it was. Is the first thing I thought about, and I don't mean to turn political here, but with our porous borders over the last 4 years, it's not surprising. And maybe these terrorists were here before that. I'm not saying definitively, and maybe you have some knowledge of if they came over during the most recent porous border. But yeah, I mean, I just have been saying with the 11 plus 12 plus million gotaways that have come across our border, knowing that a lot of them, and even DHS has admitted that many of them are terrorists, known terrorists, that it's just a matter of time.
Exactly. Well, some of them aren't known, so they can come here legally and we wouldn't know. But we would be very ignorant to think that some of them didn't take advantage of our porous border.
Right. And I think sometimes we also remind folks that it's not just the southern border either. The Canadian border has been extremely active and porous as well. So regardless of where folks voted, I just personally, that's one of the things that I'm glad about, is that I'm looking forward to seeing the borders at least improve. And we'll see. I believe that we've had one administration under President Trump. I believe he's going to do what he said he's going to do.
I hope he does, and hopefully it's before something bad happens.
Yeah, Roger.
So Boon, let me put a fine point on at least one thing you said, is that in general, what you feel could be one of the scenarios would be like an October 7th attack, like what happened in Israel, that it would be a coordinated attack on a single day in multiple locations. That's what you're saying is a possible scenario.
The information that we have, that's what it appears that it would be. But we don't know if it's a single day. It could be multiple days. It could be a week. We're not sure.
And also, to drive a further point on what Aaron stated, is when we're talking about October 7th, we all know that was Hamas attacking in Israeli neighborhoods. So from
neighborhoods.
What did I say?
No. I'm putting a fine point on it.
I'm sorry,
I'm
buddy.
getting ticked off about it. You know what I'm saying?
So the point being is that it was an attack in neighborhoods. So, I mean, when I'm hearing you say that, that's something that Aaron and I think we've spoke about that possibility on here before. And it's certainly something that we have certainly been concerned about. But to hear it come out with somebody I really trust and has their ears to the proverbial track, then that definitely piques the ears, and the hair comes up on the back of the neck for certain.
Well, and it doesn't have to look like Red Dawn to where these terrorists, let's say, fly in and literally infiltrate a few areas, and it's months that, all of us that have our food packed away and water filtration and all the stuff we know we should do to have, at least something to protect ourselves under some major event. But we don't believe, those of us that know this stuff, we don't think that's going to happen. But a couple day, week-long thing that could occur in some suburban neighborhood just out of nowhere, that is a highly probable no, but it's possible. So at least understanding that and being prepared at least a little bit, because it's not like, what would be a response? Let's just say that's what they did because a lot of people are not expecting it, that they bring 20 guys or 20 terrorists into some neighborhood somewhere, and they start going house to house and killing innocent families, etc. What would our country's response be to something like that?
Well, unfortunately, right now, I don't think that they have a response because I don't think they're taking the threat seriously.
Wow.
But it would come down to the individuals protecting themselves and then local law enforcement responding, local first responders responding. We have national assets on the federal level, both, federal law enforcement special mission units and DOD special mission units, but those guys don't just spin up in 30 minutes. Even your local SWAT team, you're looking at 35 to 40 minutes as a standard response time. So you're looking at the individual being on their own for at least 35, 40 minutes. And then the individual first responders, the guy on patrol, the gal on patrol, they're the ones responding immediately. And they're the ones who really need to be able to have a handle on it so they can minimize the casualties as much as they can.
Well, and one of the things that I think about as, possibly one of the worst case scenarios, or maybe not a worst case scenario, but something that I think is extremely viable scenario is a straight up combined arms attack of some sort, where the ease of drones, civilian drones, that can be weaponized very easily. Obviously, they have access to explosives. Obviously, they have access to small arms, or if not, larger weapon systems. I just think that if thinking through a scenario that could happen, imagine an attack that combined all of that. That would be a bad day. And unfortunately, I personally think that it's unlikely that type of attack would happen in my neighborhood. And I'm not saying that as far as braggadocious. I don't mean it that way. I would think that they would probably have at least some decent intel that attack in neighborhoods like this. Because I can tell you, right up and down my street are about 5 or 6 18 series guys that one of them really, really good friend of mine. I just think that it would be a little unlikely they would come, but who knows? Those of us in this neighborhood would be a little more prepared, but I would think that they would head into neighborhoods like outside Chicago, outside New York City, outside areas where it's known that the civilians would be less likely to be armed. What are your thoughts on that piece?
I think that's a possibility, but it's hard to speculate because Al Qaeda has evolved, and they're not bound by our politics. They're not concerned about sanctuary cities or cities that don't allow firearms. I don't think that's much of a concern to them. Although it does make sense from our perspective that you probably don't want to, invade Miami because everyone's probably got a gun.
Yep.
They might fight back, Yeah, you probably want to hit something to where individual firearm ownership is restricted. That's how we think. But I don't know if they think like that. But it makes sense to us.
Well, Boon, you've mentioned similar subjects to that before, and I think it's important to think in that we don't know. We don't know what their intent is. And a matter of fact, that may be why they do choose to go to a harder target, to say, hey, we can hit these hard targets, and let's face it, I don't care how, much training folks have. If you're completely caught off guard and you don't have your weapon systems readily available to you, or at least what I would consider in those situations, I would much rather be prepared with a carbine, and some body armor I could get, obviously close to. And I would say a majority of us might be prepared in that fashion. But even some folks with a lot of combat experience, who knows what their day is like, so you never know.
Sure, every individual is different, but I mean, I know of people who come from high level special operations units, and some of them don't even carry a gun daily.
Yep. I know some of those guys, and they're some of my really good friends, jiu-jitsu training partners, and I think it's just that they see the wars over there. That's where I'm prepared, and when I'm back home, it's not near as important. But I will say this: I think it's important to drive this home. Number one, I don't fantasize about any of that crap. I want no part of that. Right? I know I would bet that you guys both agree.
Yeah.
There are some individuals that probably do. I almost laughed. I apologize. I didn't mean to. Is that there are some individuals that do, man, bring it on. I don't think that is the proper attitude to have.
No.
Your thoughts on that one?
No, I absolutely agree. Me personally, if I never have to fight anybody or holler at anybody, for the rest of my days, I'm good with that. I'm not looking for confrontation. I do think that the American male, especially the American male who served in the military or law enforcement, does have an ego to the where, like, bring it, not in homeland, like we all carry guns, we're all trained. That won't happen here. It can happen here. And we do have a lot of people who are trained. A lot of people will step up and defend their homes,
Absolutely.
defend their communities, but a lot of people are still going to die. And that's what we want to prevent.
Yeah, I think you're making a good point, Boon, is that absolutely. I think we all agree we have a number one, we have the most, and you can correct me if you believe I'm wrong on this. At least in this period of time, we have more highly trained, or excuse me, I'll just say trained combat veterans at any time in our history. Would you agree with that? I mean, even during World War II, it was a shorter period of time. So of course we had a lot of our men and women, mainly the men, going overseas in World War II. But that was a shorter conflict compared to what we've saw in the GWAT. So we got a lot of trained people with a lot of combat experience and a lot of patriots too. So yeah,
we absolutely do.
So I think your point is that yes, there'd be a lot of folks step up, but again, if they're ill prepared and not really thinking about this as a possibility, then we know the best trained, most awesome snake eater, if completely taken by surprise, it could be their day, unfortunately. So,
and that's another big problem too, is that this isn't something that we can get ahead of. Like, it's already here. They're here. We can't stop them from getting here, and we don't know when they're going to attack. So basically, we're going to get sucker punched, and then we have to react to that. So right off the bat, whether we have trained, armed individuals that are ready to stand up, people are still going to die. And that's why we really need to focus on medical training. How many people can we save? Because it's going to happen. So that's what we really need to focus on. Yes, we need to have individual weapons to protect ourselves. We need to fight. Law enforcement needs to step up, but we really need to have those medical skills to where we can save as many as we possibly can, because the casualties are going to happen.
Yeah, very, very, very excellent point there.
Yes.
And, and again, I know one of our biggest uphill battles, can be the media, but trying our best, even in these small types of platforms, your guys' platform, you guys reach quite a bit of people on your platform. I know you guys are screaming from the top of your lungs. I mean, the reality is we need a lot of people with influence that are willing to put that information out and preach it. I think that's something, somehow we got to get more people taking the information that you're putting out and making sure that a lot more people are hearing it. Well, interesting and sobering too. Mm-hmm. We appreciate you bringing that up, and I'm sure that our audience member does too, Boon. I will say, buddy, I think we've covered a lot of information, and I think we can start closing this out. Aaron, do you have any other questions you have for Boon?
Well, I don't know if you talked about the most important question of the show last time when Sarah and Boon were on, did you?
And I don't remember. Boon, maybe you can help me remember. We record so many shows. Did I ask you any music questions? You and Sarah music questions last time?
I don't think so, but my brain's broke, so you might have.
Okay.
Well, I don't think so.
Well, then to close this show out, we can make it real quick. But the most important question on this show, you see the instruments all around us. The most important question is, what are your 3 top favorite bands and or musical artists?
That's tough. I'm not going to cop out. That's tough because I like a lot of different genres. So
that's good to hear. You can answer that however you want. 3 is how we started out, and you can skin the cat any way you want. That's just the ground floor.
Well, I'll do this, and I'll give you 3 different genres, 3 different bands that I currently like in my current mood. A month from now, it will change. So, we'll go with Prince. We'll go with Korn. And we'll go with Leonard Cohen.
Excellent. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know who Leonard Cohen is, but that Korn and Prince, that's awesome. What a great span of genres, and we're the same way, man. I'll crank up Brad Paisley just like I'll crank up Metallica or Breaking Benjamin or man, Korn. I find so fascinating that vocalist, how he can have almost a frail voice, a thin, frail voice, and then explode with this huge gruff and just incredible power. I find it fascinating. He's a very unique vocalist for sure.
Jonathan Davis has a good range.
Yeah, I was about to say Jonathan Davis, and likeness with the twins, myself and Aaron. I always love their the way the drums and the bass complement each other. Nice bottom end with the bass, and excellent attack from the drums. Of course, me being a drummer, I always appreciate that. So yeah, Korn. I listened to a little bit of them maybe about a month ago. Now you got me wanting to break it out tomorrow during my workout.
Well,
so I'm going to do that.
Prince. So there's a handful of what I consider literally perfect albums, and Prince's Purple Rain is one of them. You got Miles Davis, Kind of Blue, Sheryl Crow, Globe Session, U2, the Joshua Tree.
Yes.
But man, so Purple Rain's one of those. But you just span Prince's career. What a ridiculous musician, songwriter. And I care more about songs than musicianship, even though I care about the virtuoso music kind of thing. But man, the songs from Prince, I mean, something like the song Kiss. Holy cow, man. Singing falsetto the whole song until the very last line. Stuff like that's brilliant.
Yeah, I will admit, man, when he passed away, that hit me pretty hard. I don't,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and of course, Aaron and I have played in many bands together growing up, and in some of our, you know, rock, you know, alternative metal bands, we would play Purple Rain, and our audience, even being the genre of the music that we played, loved it as well. So I mean, Prince touched a lot of people, and we would always break down and play Purple Rain, and people loved it.
I would love to hear you guys play Purple Rain.
Well, maybe we'll have to do that sometime, Aaron.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, we'll make that happen for you.
One thing I really liked about Prince, though, like he truly was an artist to where he wrote music for other people.
Yep.
He sang, but he can also play the instruments as well.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
All of them, essentially, all the primary instruments.
And he could dance. Now, I'm not a big fan of dancing, but he could still freaking dance too. In the 80s, you had to be able to dance like that.
Well, and guys, I don't know if you saw this. I'm, you know, not a huge Oprah fan, but Aaron, maybe you saw this. Maybe you did too, Boon. I really wish that he would have recorded a version of it. But one time he was on Oprah's show, and he played Purple Rain on piano. Had either one of you heard that before?
I haven't, no.
It was amazing. It was only a short bar. But I'm like, my wife, she goes, "Hey, come listen to this. This is some time ago." And she's like, "Oh, you got to hear this." And he played just a couple of bars of Purple Rain, sang it, and played it on piano. I'm like, why didn't he record that, you know, during his life? Because it was awesome.
Well, I know we could talk too long on this, so we need to let you go, Boon. But I will say this again on Purple Rain. Guys, you can look up the video of it. Purple Rain was recorded live as basically a Lisa, I can't remember her last name, but it was a song that she had been going over, and they decided to play it at this concert, and almost as an improvised song. And there's video of them doing it, and like little tidbits of graphics coming in. So this part was overdubbed. This is what's on the recording. So yeah, it was actually a live recording. People don't understand that, you know, when they listen to a live album, they hear all kinds of reverb and all this stuff, and the people screaming and stuff. But actually, when you record instruments on a stage, it's almost like a studio. There's lots of it just doesn't sound. They make live recordings sound live because they don't sound live if they don't. But yeah, look that up. Yeah, Purple Rain was actually recorded live, basically as a jam.
And I didn't know that, Aaron.
Yep. So,
well, Boon, I will tell you, this has been a lot of fun. I hope that you had fun talking on some subjects that you don't get to hit on very often, highlighting your training, which it sounds incredible. Can't wait to get into some more. Of course, I had some training under you at the summit. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun, very informative. I think our audience is going to appreciate all of it. So thank you so much for coming on. And Aaron, I'm sure that you had just as much fun as I did.
Oh yeah, having a blast. So glad we get to talk to guys like you and learn from you and hear the breadth of experience, depth and breadth. So thanks for honoring us by coming on.
Honored to be on the show again. Thank you.
All right, Boon. Well, I guess with that said, we'll go ahead and say good night. Take care,
Good.
brother.
Be safe.
Good night, guys.